Your AR-15 didn't work on day one. You paid $400 for it. The company didn't help. Now it's worth $200 and it's broken. You're not the only one. Thousands bought the same rifle. Thousands had the same problem. This isn't bad luck. This is the 2026 AR market. Here's why 9 rifles are destroying your money. Number 9. Ruger AR-556. Ruger did something unexpected in early 2026. They killed the AR-556. Not improved it, not updated it, killed it. For years, the AR-556 was positioned as the reliable budget alternative. You could grab one for under $1,000 and it would run. It was simple. It worked. It had a 6-position stock, a carbine-length gas block, and hard-coat anodized receivers. People knew what they were getting. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't tactical. It was honest. Then Ruger announced the replacement, the Harrier. Here's the problem. The second Ruger said goodbye to the 5.56. Every single rifle sitting in a gun shop became a dead platform. No future support, no new production, no parts pipeline. You own a gun that the manufacturer has officially abandoned. This matters for resale value in ways most people don't think about. A gun isn't just a gun. It's part of an ecosystem. If the factory stops making parts, if the company stops supporting the platform, the secondary market collapses. Gunsmiths stop stocking parts. Aftermarket manufacturers move on. Your rifle becomes harder to maintain, harder to upgrade, and nearly impossible to sell. The used market for 5.56 is already seeing the ripple. People who bought these guns expecting a stable platform now own an orphan. They're dumping them at lower prices to get ahead of the total collapse. Dealers know it. Buyers know it. Ruger moved on, and anyone holding a 5.56 is sitting on a depreciating asset. This is the first harsh reality. The manufacturer doesn't owe you anything. Not tomorrow, not next year, not ever. The second they announce a replacement, your rifle's life expectancy on the resale market starts counting down. Number 8. FN-15 Patrol Carbine. The FN-15 was supposed to be different. FN is a serious company. Military contracts, law enforcement contracts, serious manufacturing. The FN-15 Patrol Carbine was positioned as a military-grade rifle for civilians. It had the pedigree. Mil-spec standards ensure near-universal part compatibility. FN could deliver something that actually performed at a professional level. Gun reviewers noted it. The rifle was consistently reliable. It shot well. It handled recoil properly. Retail pricing sits around $1,060 to $1,250. The problem is visibility. The FN-15 remains widely available, but it doesn't dominate conversation. It's a staple rifle that most people don't talk about. It's the one that works reliably, comes with solid parts, and then disappears from the spotlight. Think about what that means for a manufacturer. You build a legitimate rifle. You meet military standards. You price it competitively. But the market doesn't care because you're not trendy. You're not budget. You're not premium prestige. You're just FN. Solid. Forgotten. A military-grade rifle with legitimate pedigree should hold momentum. Instead, the FN-15 became invisible because it wasn't part of the narrative. Buyers went to PSA for budget or Daniel Defense for prestige. FN existed in that forgotten middle space where reliability doesn't matter as much as brand presence. This is the brutal reality of modern marketing. A gun is only as relevant as its story. The FN-15 has no story. It just works. Number 7. CMMG MK4 Resolute. The CMMG MK4 Resolute sits right in the premium to upper mid-tier range. MSRP around $1,599. Sale prices typically between $1,100 and $1,400. That's not a budget rifle. That's positioning for serious buyers. The problem is, the market doesn't care about CMMG at that price point. At $1,100, you can get Aero Precision M4E1 with better parts and tighter tolerances. At $1,200, Daniel Defense is in play. At $1,400, you're looking at BCM Rexy territory with proven combat heritage and stronger QC. CMMG exists in the gap where nobody wants them. They're premium enough to be expensive, not prestigious enough to justify the cost. The demand data reflects this reality. New demand is flat to negative. Used demand is flat. The market isn't excited about CMMG. They're not building momentum. They're not the go-to choice at any price point. If you're spending that kind of money, you go Aero for value or DD for prestige. CMMG is nobody's first choice. This matters because the premium tier is where manufacturers should dominate. But CMMG can't compete with established names. They sell some rifles, sure, but they're fighting an uphill battle against brands that have actual market presence and customer loyalty. Number 6. Smith & Wesson M and P15 Sport 2 and 3. Smith & Wesson built the M and P15 to compete in the budget tier. It was supposed to be an American brand alternative to PSA and Anderson. Solid, reliable, backed by a real company. Then quality control fell apart. People who bought Sport 2 models reported inconsistent assembly. Some rifles ran fine. Others had feeding problems right out of the box. Magazine compatibility issues. Trigger inconsistencies. The QC wasn't tight enough. Parts weren't staked correctly. Bolts weren't properly treated. S&W eventually fixed these problems with the Sport 3. They listened. They corrected the manufacturing issues. The newer ones actually run. But the damage was permanent. Even though the Sport 3 is solid, the brand is still recovering from the Sport 2 disaster. People remember buying a gun from a supposedly reputable company and getting a rifle that didn't work. That trust doesn't come back quickly. Each used Sport 2 that shows up on the market carries the baggage of, "This might be one of the bad ones." This is the reputation problem nobody talks about. Guns aren't like other products. If a coffee maker breaks, you throw it away and buy a different brand. A gun failure is personal. It's a failure of trust. It's a failure of engineering. It's a failure of the company to stand behind their product. Smith & Wesson has never fully recovered from the Sport 2 era, even though they've fixed the issues. The used market reflects this. M and P15 resale is underwater compared to Aero or BCM. People remember the problems. They're not confident. They don't bid as high. Number 5. Bushmaster XM15-E2S. Bushmaster has a specific reputation, the rifle that doesn't work. But that reputation is more complicated than it seems. The XM15-E2S carries a documented history of failure dating back to the Freedom Group era, 2006 to 2020. Single-shot malfunctions, extraction failures, firing pin issues. These aren't anecdotal complaints. These are documented across forums, YouTube channels, and gunsmith reports from that period. The typical experience from that era: buy the rifle, take it to the range, fire one round, second round fails to feed. The bolt tries to chamber a new round, but the previous brass doesn't extract. You have to disassemble the rifle on the range to clear it. You take it to a gunsmith. The gunsmith can't identify an obvious problem. You clean it thoroughly, go back to the range, same issue happens. Here's the critical update. Modern Bushmaster rifles are manufactured in Carson City, Nevada, and recent reviews have been considerably better. The brand has started distancing itself from the Freedom Group legacy. The Bravo Zulu models coming out of Nevada are getting positive feedback. QC has improved. But the market memory remains brutal. People remember the bad years. The Freedom Group reputation is still attached to the Bushmaster name, even though modern production is different. That trust damage doesn't disappear overnight. Buyers see Bushmaster and think of XM15-E2S failures, not Nevada-era improvements. The used market for Bushmaster rifles still reflects the old reputation. Prices stay depressed. Buyers avoid the brand. Even solid used Nevada models struggle to sell because the market memory is too strong. Number 4. Colt CR6920. Colt invented the AR-15. They were the standard, the original. the rifle that set the pattern for everything that came after. For decades, Colt was the name. If you wanted an AR, you bought a Colt. Starting in 2020, Colt moved away from the AR-15 roll mark on their civilian carbines, rebranding to Colt Carbine. The CR6920 is now their primary civilian model. It's a fine rifle, but fine isn't good enough anymore. In 2026, the Colt CR6920 is worth $1,063 new. Used, $814, but here's the killer number. Used prices dropped $239 year over year. That's a 23% depreciation in 12 months. Meanwhile, new demand increased only 3 units. Used demand, 1 unit. This is what market irrelevance looks like. Colt makes a fine rifle. It always has. But fine isn't good enough anymore. For the same money, you can get a Daniel Defense with better parts, or a BCM with proven reliability, or split the difference and go Aero Precision, which offers 90% of the performance at half the cost. Colt is trapped by their own history. They're not cheap enough to be a value play. They're not special enough to be a prestige purchase. They're just Colt, the brand that used to matter. The rebranding to CR6920 was supposed to modernize the image. Instead, it just highlighted that Colt no longer defines the conversation. The resale market has priced this reality into every single gun. A used Colt CR6920 is harder to sell than used rifles from younger brands because those brands have actual momentum. Colt has nostalgia. Nostalgia doesn't pay your rent. Number 3. Bear Creek Arsenal BC-15. Bear Creek Arsenal operates on what's being called the QC lottery model. Technically, the guns can work. Sometimes they do work perfectly, but there's a documented probability that yours won't. The incidents are real. Users report bolt lugs shearing off, extraction failures, firing pin issues. Importantly, bolt shearing occurs statistically more often in large bore variants, like the .450 Bushmaster, because the larger cartridge rim requires reduced material on the bolt face, compromising structural integrity. These aren't just cosmetic failures. Some of these failures happened in controlled settings where they could have been catastrophic. A bolt failure in a rifle can cause serious injury or death. Here's the actual sentiment. 9 out of 10 times it won't give you an issue. That's not a selling point. That's an indictment. You're gambling 1 in 10 odds on whether your rifle works. That's not a firearm. That's a lottery ticket where the losing ticket is a safety risk. BCA's strategy is volume over quality. They pump out rifles at the lowest possible price point and accept that a percentage will fail. They handle warranty replacements. They move on. The problem is the reputational damage every replacement creates. Each BCA failure story circulates online. Each gunsmith who has to fix a BCA rifle tells the next customer. Each forum post about a BCA malfunction adds to the pattern. By 2026, BCA has become the brand you buy if you have no other choice. The warranty process itself is part of the problem. Owners report waiting weeks or months for replacements. Some send rifles back, get them returned, and the same issues persist on the replacement unit. Others decide it's not worth the hassle. The customer service isn't designed to solve problems. It's designed to process them statistically, acknowledging that some percentage will fail and managing that cost as a business expense. That's not a warranty, that's triage. The resale market has priced this in completely. A used BCA is worth around $360. That's essentially scrap value. Dealers don't want them on the rack because they know they won't sell. Private sellers dump them because they're tired of dealing with the reliability issues. The only people buying BCA rifles used are people who can't afford anything else and are willing to accept the risk as the price of entry. Number 2. Anderson AM-15. Anderson Manufacturing sits at the absolute bottom of the market. These are rifles designed to be cheap, feature minimal, bare-bones functionality. For years, that was enough. Budget-conscious shooters bought Anderson rifles. Builders used Anderson lowers as components in custom builds. The platform existed. It served its purpose. It moved inventory. Then, everyone else got cheap. By 2026, the Anderson AM-15 is caught in a squeeze. PSA offers similar price points with marginally better components. Davidson Defense undercuts on cost. Radical Firearms has more modern ergonomics. Anderson is left holding the bag for a market that realized cheap is everywhere. New demand is down 9 units year over year. Used demand is up 6 units. Translation: people are abandoning Anderson rifles. They're flushing them out of their collections. They're trying to dump them before they become completely worthless. The resale value tells the story. Used Anderson rifles are valued around $375. They're selling for less than half their original purchase price. A gun that cost $550 new is worth barely a third of that on the used market. The math doesn't work for anyone holding one. The builder ecosystem has collapsed around Anderson lowers too. Years ago, serious builders picked Anderson lowers as base platforms. Cheap, acceptable quality, good parts compatibility. Now builders either go PSA for complete rifles or spend slightly more on arrow receivers that actually hold value. Anderson lowers that were once staples in custom builds now sit in inventory gathering dust. The secondary market for used Anderson parts is equally dead. Nobody needs them anymore because the value equation changed entirely. Anderson rifles are becoming the rifle nobody wants because nobody needs them anymore. There's no specific reason to pick Anderson. They're not premium. They're not trendy. They're not known for reliability. They're just old, and the market has moved on. The brand exists, but has no identity. It's the rifle equivalent of generic. That's a death sentence in a market saturated with actual brands. Number 1. Palmetto State Armory, PA-15. PSA doesn't just make AR-15s. They've become the AR-15, the volume leader, the default choice. More PSA rifles are sold annually than any other single manufacturer. The PA-15 is everywhere. But here's the problem. Everyone knows it's a lottery. The sentiment data is stunning. PSA is praised for value and price and affordability. PSA is simultaneously crushed for reliability complaints. Failure to feed is the most common issue. Jamming, QC inconsistencies, dice roll is how people describe buying a PSA. You get lucky or you don't. PSA's business model creates this. They sell by volume at the lowest possible price point. Quality control is statistical, not comprehensive. Some guns run forever, others fail immediately. The company accepts this. They make money on volume. Warranty replacements are part of the cost structure. The secondary market is flooded with used PSA rifles from people who figured out their lottery ticket was a loser. Prices are dropping. New, down $21.73 year over year. Used, down $8.53. The momentum is consistently downward. But here's what kills the whole PSA story. Even with the QC problems, they're still dominating sales. Not because they're good, because they're cheap, because buyers would rather gamble on a $350 rifle than save for a quality gun. Because PSA has convinced the market that price is the only variable that matters. The psychology is clear. Buyers see a PSA rifle advertised at $399 and think they won. They don't think about the possibility that it won't work. They don't budget for the gunsmith visit to fix feeding issues. They don't consider that the resale value is collapsing. They see the price and make the purchase. PSA's marketing works because it doesn't sell quality. It sells the illusion of a deal. The company has captured the market by making buyers feel smart when they spend less money, regardless of what they actually get in return. The harsh reality of the AR market in 2026 is that the largest seller is also the riskiest purchase. More people are buying PSA rifles than anything else, and more people are abandoning them on the secondary market. It's a pyramid of disappointment that keeps growing because PSA keeps feeding volume into the bottom. The company wins financially even if the customer loses. That asymmetry defines the entire market now. Conclusion: the AR-15 market in 2026 isn't what it was. The illusion of the AR as an investment is dead. Resale values are collapsing across budget and mid-tier models. Discontinued rifles become worthless overnight. QC failures at scale are destroying brand trust. Ammunition costs are climbing, making ownership more expensive every month. The harsh reality is this: you're not buying an asset. You're buying a depreciating liability that might not even work reliably. If you still want an AR, budget 3 times the purchase price for training and ammunition, and accept that resale will hurt.